Hi, and welcome back from the Fantasy Football Profits. As always, we thank you guys so much for being here. We're really excited. It's the 3rd of March, and we're just starting to get really starting to kick back into fantasy football mode, so we're excited. Took a little bit of time off. Just still coming down from that Super Bowl. It was a great game. Today we're going to be talking about the best running back keepers for 2018. This video goes well where we'll do quarterback and wide receiver, possibly even a tight end best keepers for next year as well. We're not going to do kicker or defenses. We think that's probably a little bit extensive and absurd. Of course, we will as we get closer to the season because, as you'll talk about a bit more, and I will too, important thing to remember is it's March 3rd and things are going to change. And these are really fun to talk about, and they give us a really nice lens to understand the offseason and kind of predict who might go where, trades, drafts, things like that, free agency. But really wouldn't lean too much weight on it as so much is going to change. I'd be surprised if this was even somewhat accurate by the time the season comes around. Rob, you have anything you want to say before we start?
Yeah, it's fun to get back into this. Obviously, congrats to the Philadelphia Eagles for winning the championship this year. They beat my Minnesota Vikings. It was heartbreaking, but I have to admit, even in losing to the Eagles, it was a fun postseason. The way we beat New Orleans, Stephon Diggs, what a great memory. I'll never forget that. But it is fun to get back into fantasy football mode at this point. And like you said, we're going to give you guys the keepers at this point. If football started today, here's our top 20 Dynasty running backs would be. I think the key to being a successful fantasy football player is you need to have convictions, obviously, but you have to have flexibility, willingness to change as new information comes in. So we haven't had the draft yet. There'll be injuries off season. So much is going to happen. There'll be trades, and of course we'll continue to update it. But right now, as of today, this is who we have as our top 20 running backs going into next year.
So as we get into it, we'll go every other. You'll do your number one. I'll do my number one. And we'll just kind of go back and forth. And then I'll, of course, tell you why yours are wrong and why mine is right. And that'll probably be the best part of the video. All right. So do you want to start? We agree on the number one, so that's good. But Le'Veon Bell, do you want to tell us why? I mean, I feel like this one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, self-explanatory. I tell you what, here's my take on Le'Veon Bell. For me, it's kind of a safe pick. Honestly, if you take a look at it, the guy hasn't had a huge touchdown totals per se. He's been very consistent. When I look at all the other running backs, there are guys like Todd Gurley. If he repeats the year he had this year, obviously he's going to be a better pick. I think Ezekiel Elliott, full year playing 16 games, may even outscore him. But the bottom line is, for me, Le'Veon Bell is the most consistent running back out there, year in and year out. If he's on the field, he's going to produce. You just can trust this guy. Last year, I think his numbers actually could have been even better. He sat out week 16, but the first 3 weeks, his production really struggled. He was a holdout because they signed him to a, they tagged him. And so he didn't report to preseason, so he's a little rusty, out of shape. And it took him about 3 weeks to really start hitting on all cylinders. That hurt his production. So you add that in there, the fact he didn't play week 16, his numbers could have been even better. But this is a guy who is just solid. In fact, if you take a look at 3 of the last 4 years when he has not been injured, if you take a look at how many catches he averages per game and you extrapolate that out over 16 games, he's actually averaged 91 catches per season. This guy is phenomenal, not just in the running game, the passing game. This guy's lights out. And I think you even brought it up. He feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's still relatively young. How old is he now?
He's still only 26. I believe he might be 27 by the time the season rolls around, but 27 is perfectly doable. That's still not old per se.
Yeah, so I like Le'Veon Bell, number one. He's the most trustworthy guy out there. The one thing I would say is in PPR leagues, he has huge value. If you're in a standard league, you need to bump him down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Standard league, bump him down. The only thing that I would really add to that is I'm hearing this argument of people who want to keep the younger guys. They want to keep Elliott or Hunt or Gurley or Kamara, one of those guys, and they get really excited about them, and that's really great. But the NFL changes so much from year to year that, first of all, the guys on your roster right now, you're probably not going to have on your roster 3 or 4 or 5 fantasy seasons from now. So if you're keeping Alvin Kamara because you think you have him 6 years from now, that's probably not the best choice, though you should keep him. He's a great running back. But, keep focused. It's a keeper league and it's long term, but you also want to worry about winning this year. And Bell is your best chance of winning this year, just straight up. So that's why I went Bell number one. And then number 2, we disagree. Do you want to talk about number 2? I can go first.
Yeah, I'll start with mine. Todd Gurley. This guy was a TD machine last year. He did great. For a lot of people, he actually won your championships. I know many people that won their fantasy championships because Todd Gurley got hot at the right time in the playoffs. Since he's been in the league 3 years, this guy's got all the things. He's got great hands out of the backfield. He's got good size at 227 pounds, 6'1". He's got everything that he needs to be a great back. The one concern that I have, and the reason why he was number 2 and not number 1 for me, is his sophomore season. He really struggled. His yards per carry 3.2. I think we can throw that right out of the books. I think that's really because of Jeff Fisher. Without him there, I think there's no reason to think that this guy can't go out and put up those same numbers. I see a guy that for the next 5 or 6 years is going to be top 5, top 10 in running back scoring. I love Todd Gurley. He has everything to be successful for a very young team there.
Yeah, exactly. I love Gurley. I think he's extremely talented. I'll talk about him later, why I bumped him down. You guys can see right now. I have him number 4, but I'll talk about him later. I have Kareem Hunt as my number 2. He was a guy I actually didn't like that much coming into the season. Even after Spencer Ware got hurt, I didn't expect him to be all that amazing, but I was definitely wrong. Look at the numbers. First of all, he won the rushing title, which was a big deal, 1,300 yards, but he also had 455 yards receiving. That's why I like him. He can get it done on the ground. He's in an offense where they're just going to keep pounding him the rock, especially as they get into the red zone. I think they're very comfortable doing that, especially under their young quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. But he can also come out of the backfield. I mean, nowadays we're talking about fancy running backs, especially now that PPR is becoming more common. These running backs have to be productive receivers if they're going to be great scorers and if they're going to stay on the field and do a lot. And I like that Kareem Hunt can do that. He's very underrated in that aspect. He combined for 11 touchdowns last year. I think he'll be a touchdown machine this next year. I mean, when you look at the way that Chiefs offense is built, I just think it's built around Kareem Hunt. And I'm excited to see what he can do. I just think they're really going to lean on him.
Yeah, you take a look at nowadays in football, if you're running back, then you can't be effective in the passing game if you can't catch the ball in the backfield. It really brings down your value. In fact, we'll get to it very later on in the video. But right now, there's rumor out there that the Miami Dolphins, Chicago Bears might be pulling off a trade that would send Jordan Howard to Miami for Jarvis Landry. And the reason why is the coach for Chicago really feels like Howard, although he's a great running back, really lacks some gifts and some abilities in the passing game. So just reinforces what you said, which is in the NFL nowadays, if you're a running back, you've got to be able to be out there on third downs. You got to be able to be out there in passing downs and be effective. So,
the one other thing that I was going to add is, and I kind of saw Kareem Hunt this way throughout the season, but again, I was wrong. I kind of saw him as a bulk running back who wasn't going to have a great yards per carry, and he was. He had 272 carries, but he also averaged 4.9 yards per carry. That's a really good combination of he's getting the ball a lot, but he's also doing something with it. We've seen back when I first started watching football, watching like Maurice Jones-Drew get 300 carries in a season, barely move the ball anywhere, just at all. And then you get guys like Jamal Charles get a lot less touches, injured a lot, but when they did get it, they do a lot with it. I feel like he's a great combination of that ability to do a lot with the ball, but also in an offense and a system that's going to keep feeding him the ball. So I'm excited personally to see what he can do with that.
Okay. Well, let's get to our number 3 guy. For me, I got Ezekiel Elliott. So here's the thing. Here's why I got Ezekiel at number 3 overall. Arguably the best offensive line in football, and that's the key to the offensive line. It's just a bunch of they move men, they make holes. They're great. Now, last year, his yards per carry down a little bit. I think there's a few reasons for that. It was a really tumultuous offseason and regular season for him. From week to week, not know if he's going to play. Is he going to be suspended? Looks like he's not going to play. The day before they would find out he's going to play, he'd be in the lineup. And then finally, at the end of the year, they ultimately withheld the suspension. I think going into this year, with a full year, the uncertainty is gone. We know he's going to have a full 16 games. This guy's got all the tools. He's got the size. He can get to the ball in the backfield, like we had mentioned. My only concern for Ezekiel Elliott at this point, like I said, he's a young, very talented running back, is just his ability to stay out of trouble. As we've seen, there's been some issues, but as of late, he's been pretty quiet lately, which I think bodes well for next year. I like Ezekiel Elliott back for a full season. Doesn't have to worry about being suspended. Got a great offensive line. He's a guy that, besides Bell and Gurley, I trust. He's going to be a stud.
Yeah, no, I absolutely have to agree with you. The 4.1 yards per carry last season was a little alarming because that is fairly low to put a running back number 3 overall. But like you say, it's just so important to recognize that whole offense was a mess. And that is not the Dallas offense that we've seen in years past, and that's not the Dallas offense that we've seen behind Prescott and with Elliott. And so personally, I think they're going to turn around, although there is that fear. Is that Dallas offense worse now? What's wrong? Can they fix it? I mean, I think we can assume that they're going to fix it, but if they don't, then he certainly drops far down on this list, that's for sure. So, I agreed with you on that. That's basically all I had to add. Now we're on to our number 4 picks, which were basically our number 2 picks, just flipped.
Yeah, for me, it's Kareem Hunt. Really love the guy. I bumped him in at Alvin Kamara, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, why I did. For me, he's got all those things we talked about. He's got the intangible, great yards per carry, 4.9. He's a big enough back that he can get a decent amount of carries at 216 pounds. He's not huge. He's great in the passing game. I actually think that there's going to be a statistical bump next year with Patrick Mahomes there. He's more versatile. I think that he's more agile. He can scramble, move the ball. Different than Alex Smith. I think that's going to actually bode well for Hunt. I really like him going to next year. I think this guy's got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly. So on to why I bumped Todd Gurley down to number 4. And first of all, I want to say that 4 is really not that low. I don't want to act like I'm super crazy hating on him, but I just had to bump him below Hunt and Elliott simply because he's had a very bipolar career, and that leaves a lot of question marks for me. In addition, he played phenomenal last season. He got 19 touchdowns combined rushing and receiving. But I don't think that he's going to do that again this year. I imagine that offense is going to take a step back. Jared Goff had a great season last year. They all did. But you know what? I notice every year there's a team that plays unbelievable, and the next year they take a step back. And for me, that's the Rams. They came out of nowhere and surprised us with an extremely young cast and came out and did something that was kind of shocking for me, but I don't trust them necessarily, and I know this I don't trust them attitude doesn't sound great. Like, how can you really support that? But I mean, we look at how terrible they were just a year before. Now, they came out hot last year. Imagine teams start to figure them out and they start to focus on Todd Gurley. I still think that that team is going to be great next year. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think that that whole offense takes a bit of a step back, and that's severely going to hurt Todd Gurley. Again, he's still 4th overall. He's still right up there in that tier number 1 guys and compete with them, but I don't think he's going to get 19 touchdowns again. That was absurd.
Yeah. One of the things we're going to talk about here, we're going to begin talking about number 5 pick. A lot of these things are based on your scoring system. If you're in a PPR league, it's going to elevate certain guys if you're standard, it'll lower certain guys, so on and so forth. So we're going to give you some just basic overall things to consider, but you do need to take this and put in the context of your league scoring system. So for me, the number 5 guy is Alvin Kamara. So I put him number 5 overall. What is not to like about this guy? I can't remember last time a guy came in the league as a running back and showed this much skill. It really took 3-4 weeks before they really began to increase his role. So if they begin from the beginning of the season, if Adrian Peterson wasn't there, that would have been more carries. I think his numbers would have been elevated, obviously. He had yards per carry of 6.1. He had 728 rushing yards. He had 81 catches for 826 receiving yards. He had a total of 13 touchdowns. This kid did it all. He was phenomenal. So what's not to like about him? Well, at this point, I do have a few concerns. I'll share with you what they are. With that said, I still think this guy's got a bright future. One concern that I have right now is his size. He's not a big back. He's not a small back, but can he handle 20 carries a game? I think we're gonna have to wait and see if he can handle that sort of punishment. The other concern that I have is between really it's him and Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram had a great year last year. Between the two of them, they had 25 touchdowns total and they had 139 catches. That was a record-setting year for 2 backs. Well, there's a reason why it's a record-setting year, because not many teams do that. And so I think it's very difficult to assume that team, the New Orleans Saints, is going to go out and be able to have that much production for 2 running backs. So that could hurt him statistically this year with Mark Ingram there. It would almost been better if they traded him, or if he's a free agent, or if he went somewhere, whatever it is. But Alvin Kamara, once again, has got all the skills. I think this guy's a stud. I'm excited to watch what he does next year.
Yeah, I can't argue too much with that pick. As you guys can see, I have Jordan Howard there, and, I kind of look like an idiot right now. We did all the research for this, and we made the PowerPoint, and then comes out the news that the Bears want to trade Jordan Howard and to get rid of him for a wide receiver. And I think that says a lot of their lack of confidence for him and how much they don't want to use him. To be honest, it was a little too late to just bump him down in the order. So I'll tell you why I put him there when I put him there based on the information, but I certainly think things have changed and we really have to reevaluate that. But when we look at that, you see in 2016 he had 5.2 yards per carry, 1,300 yards, 300 yards receiving. He looks unbelievably talented as a running back. He's a great one-cut, physical beast, very agile. Love what he's able to do, and was just one thing that we talked about was just great. If that offense could just pick it up and give him boost. I mean, last year he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns in an offense that was pretty brutal, and that was my expectation. At the end of the year, the offense was improving. Mitchell Trubisky was starting to play a little bit better, and that offense was actually able to move the ball a bit. And I figured a guy who played that great with bad offense, suddenly he gets an okay offense, will play even better. But, to be honest, I agree with you. He's just too high now that you look at that they're trying to trade him. They clearly don't have any trust in him or desire to use him.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to get to my pick in a bit. I've got Jordan Howard ranked obviously in the top 20. I actually love this guy, and so I'm going to argue a little bit on why I could have had him maybe higher than I did. But I don't have number 5, but I think this guy is very, 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 very solid. So.
Exactly. But yeah, that definitely blindsided us, or at least me today. So we'll see how that goes. Now we'll move on to our 6 through 10 picks.
So number 6 for me is Leonard Fournette. Another one of the guys, what's not to like about him? So he goes out. This guy's a big physical running back. He can pound the ball between the tackles. We see him get a lot of goal line carries in his career. He had over 1,000 yards in only 13 games. He had 38 catches. Concerns I had, his yards per carry were low, only 3.9. That could be a product of the offense. Maybe Blake Bortles, maybe teams didn't respect him enough and they load the box. It's hard to say. There are a few games last year where he kind of disappeared at times. He had some injuries. All those things considered, though, he still had a very good rookie season. He's a big physical back. I think he's a guy that you can trust going into next year will improve.
Yeah, exactly. So now my number 6 is Alvin Kamara. And, you know, I wrestled with that. I put him one lower than you, and I totally agree with what you said. The only thing that makes me nervous and makes me lower Alvin Kamara is Mark Ingram. How is Alvin Kamara going to be a top 5 fantasy scoring running back when he's competing with Mark Ingram, who got 12 touchdowns last year on 4.9 yards per carry and had 58 receptions? I mean, that's so hard to compete with. Like I said, I think that he's going to take over a little bit more of that role from Mark Ingram. I think Mark Ingram's going to really lose a little bit this season, and you'll start to see that be Kamara's offense. And yet still, Ingram is so good. He's going to take carries away. And I think that Kamara might be the best running back in the NFL. In a couple of years, we might be saying, oh yeah, for sure. But, you know, right now, he's just limited his time. That offense is great, but and just never be able to have quite the same impact as those other guys who are just getting more touches, more carries, and more catches, you know? So that's it for my number 6. Pretty simple. I only bumped him one lower than you, so we both pretty much agree, but I think he'd be higher, certainly, if it weren't for Mark Ingram.
Yeah. My number 7 guy is Dalvin Cook. Of course, as a Vikings fan, I love the guy came on. All the conversation out of college was he's got all these skills. He could be number 1 running back in terms of how his career finishes. He does have a hard time staying healthy, was one of the knocks. Well, he tears his ACL. At that point, he was near the top in the league leading as far as rushing yards go. His yards per carry were great. He was catching the ball in the backfield. This guy looked explosive. He seemed to be the real deal. Now, as of right now, all reports seem to indicate he's recovered very well, and he might even be ready for OTAs, although it sounds like the Vikes aren't going to rush him back. But come the beginning of this year, it sounds like he'll be 100% ready to go. I love this guy. He's another one that can do everything. He can be on the field. He's a 3-down back. I love Dalvin Cook. One concern, staying healthy.
Yeah, exactly. At number 7, I had to go David Johnson. Let's not forget that the last time we saw him play out a full season, he got 20 touchdowns and combined for over 2,000 yards rushing and receiving. Now, I certainly don't think he's going to get over 2,000 yards rushing and receiving and 20 touchdowns again. We're not going to see those numbers. But I have to put him up here for one reason, and that's the way that he played. Now, the argument is for lowering him a lot of times would be he doesn't have a good offense around him. But when you looked at the team in 2016 that he had, it wasn't much better than it is now. And he's really the main staple of that offense. He got 879 yards receiving, 1,239 yards rushing that year. So you can really see that offense was built around him, and especially this year, they're going to be leaning on him quite a bit. He might not have the highest efficiency numbers because teams will key on him, but he's going to get the ball a ton, especially in the end zone, and that's why I got to put him up there. I don't think any other player this coming season is going to get the ball as much as David Johnson does, if he can just stay healthy.
So for me, number 8, I got Jordan Howard. I love Jordan Howard. I think this guy's a throwback running back. He's physical. He's 6'2", 224 pounds, a one-cut back, like you mentioned. This guy runs hard. I love to watch this guy. He's been handcuffed really for a very, very bad team. If you consider last year that Mitch Trubisky, no real wideouts, it's amazing what he's been able to accomplish in 2 years in the league. In fact, if you take a look at 2 years in the league combined, he's got 2,435 yards. In fact, that's the Chicago Bears record. And he's beat big names like Gale Sayers and Walter Payton. He's actually ahead of them in the first 2 years. He's got 15 touchdowns in 2 seasons. When you consider what he's done, when a lot of times he's faced loaded boxes, because when defense have played him, they really loaded the box to shut him down. You're not worried about Mitch Trubisky. Yeah, you're still able to go out and have 1,000 yards last 2 years. That's quite amazing. Now, last year he did see a major drop off in his yards per carry. He went from 5.2 the first year to 4.1, but I think that's a byproduct of, once again, teams loading the box for this guy. The concern that I have for him and why he's not top 5 for me is he doesn't have great hands. In fact, he's got 14 drops in the past 2 years, so he's a liability in the passing game. As far as just simply being a pure runner, he might be one of the best in the league. He might even be top 3 in terms of just simply being the best pure running back out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my number 8, I went with Dalvin Cook. I have him one lower than you, so again, that's basically the same. Gotta love that guy. Before he got injured, he was 3rd in yards among running backs. He's going to be in this Minnesota Vikings offense that I'm excited to watch as a Vikings fan. You can see him wearing the hat here. I'm excited to see what they can do. Hopefully they can do something great with him. But it was clear that he was producing. One thing to note, too, is that the best that offense got last season was later on, right? Dalvin Cook was there, and the offense was going great, and then Bradford and Cook go down, and the offense struggles for a while, and then they catch their groove, and they get a lot better again, and those wide receivers really start to pick up production, and so does Keenum. So I'd like to see what Dalvin Cook can do now that he's back with the rest of that offense fully clicking. I'm really excited for that, especially if they get Kirk Cousins. His value goes up a lot. Hopefully they do.
We're crossing our fingers, right?
Fingers crossed. We don't have money, but hopefully we can offer him something else. We can't offer him rings. We can't offer that, but we can offer him something, I hope.
Okay, so for me, number 9, I got David Johnson. He's another guy I forget a couple years ago. This guy was a stud, a lot of touchdowns. His total yards were amazing. He's got great hands. He's big. He's physical. There are a couple question marks I have for him and why I dropped him down to number 9. I'm sure he'll be recovered from his wrist surgery. But one concern I have is yards per carry in his career haven't been great. It's only 4.3. And so he's a volume play. He's got a lot of touches there. The other thing is just the quarterback situation is kind of murky at this point. We really don't know. We know that Palmer is retired at this point. There's talk that they might make a run at Kirk Cousins. So for me, I really want to wait and see who their quarterback is. And if you get a quality quarterback in there, definitely bump his value up. If not, I think you're going to see another case where teams are going to focus on shutting down David Johnson. But he's still a stud. He's a top 10 guy. I love him.
Yeah, so my number 9 is Jay Ajayi. I'm really excited to see who can do this year. I think he's going to be a sponge in the touchdown department. I think he's going to find the end zone a ton. Let's just look at a little bit of a comparison because he had an interesting year being traded kind of like right dead in the middle. He was only averaging 3.4 yards per carry for the Dolphins. It was clear they didn't want to use him like they should have, and they were just not happy with his production. So then the Eagles pick him up, and they don't really use him that much for quite a while. But his average yards per carry goes up. In fact, he averages 5.8 yards per carry for the Eagles. And you know what? Despite all of that year, playing for one team that barely used him, didn't want him, traded him away, goes to another team, spends a couple of weeks on the bench kind of earning his role up. He still gets over 800, almost 900 yards rushing that year. I'm really excited to see what he can do in that offense with Carson Wentz coming back. I think he's just going to find the end zone repeatedly. I look at the way that offense rolls. Once they get in the red zone, they are perfectly fine just handing it off to their backs and handing off to their backs. And this year, their back mainly is going to be Jay Ajayi. I'm excited to see what he can do. I wouldn't be surprised if he got 12, 14 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, number 10 for me is Jay Ajayi. Maybe you can take a look at this up while I'm talking here. But last year, I think he had 3 200-yard rushing games. This guy's a stud. Going into this year, he got traded, and like you said, it took a while for him to learn the playbook. They slowly worked him in. They didn't rush him in. But once he got on the field and he started seeing increased carries, this guy was very, very productive. I'm excited for him for a full season playing for Philadelphia with Carson Wentz healthy at quarterback, getting 20 to 25 touches a game, whether it's catching the ball or carries. I think this guy is going to be a stud. Looking up the numbers there, is that what we have?
Yeah, it looked like he had 2 100 rushing yard games.
Okay, so still pretty phenomenal anyways. This guy's a quality running back. I think that he's going to be a steal for a lot of owners out there.
Yeah. All right, so at 10, I put Leonard Fournette. There's absolutely no arguing Leonard Fournette is a beast. He is a great runner. Man, he's a truck. He is still agile. He can move the ball. I have 2 concerns. The first is his health. Is this guy going to be on the field all season? Probably not. He's going to miss some games for you most likely. And if you're going to keep a running back, that matters. That's huge. If your running back goes down in the middle of a season, that can just derail your entire chance of winning a championship. But on top of that, and even more importantly, I do not trust that offense. That offense played okay at best last year. They had some great streaks, a couple of games, when they played the 49ers. Blake Bortles played great. But, other than that, they played kind of terrible, that offense. I still don't trust Blake Bortles. They went far in the playoffs, but that was purely on that defense. And I don't trust a running back who has injury problems, and they're just going to lean on him as a workhorse with a struggling pass game, no tight end there. A couple of wide receivers are okay. I'm excited to see what Keelan Cole can do.
You're talking this guy down, but you still got him top 10.
Oh, well, I do have him top 10. Like I said, he's physically, there's no arguing with what he can do with the ball. But that offense and those injuries will hold him back from being higher for me. I mean, that's just simple as it gets, you know. I don't trust him to be on the field. And like I said, that team holds him back. If they can't get first downs, he can't get many carries, that's for sure.
So for me, number 11, I've got Freeman. Look at Devonta Freeman for me, number 11. This guy has been a pretty reliable back. In fact, take a look at the last 3 years. He got a total of 35 touchdowns. That's very, very good. He can get the ball in the backfield. He's got great hands. If you take a look at his catches the last couple of years, he's had 73 3 years ago, 54, and this year 36, although he did miss some times with some injuries. So this guy, when he's on the field, is a pretty reliable back. Concerns I had, well, when he first came in the league, his yards per carry weren't that great. He had 3.8, next year 4.0. That wasn't that impressive, but he really took a bump in production last 2 years. He had 4.0 yards per carry 2 years ago, 4.4 carries this last year. The one concern that I've had for him the moment he came in the league, and even now, is his durability. You know, he's 5'8", but he's only 206 pounds. It's a little bit on the small side for running back, so I do worry at times about his ability to continue taking punishment like that. But once again, when he's on the field, when he's healthy, this guy's proven to be very productive.
Yeah, I put Freeman there too, but I think that this is on the high end of Freeman's value. I don't see him going any higher than this, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, Tevin Coleman right there. He is a very productive running back who's kind of nipping at his heels, and if something happens to Freeman, that certainly could take away a lot of his playing time and his ability. I like what you said about the struggling with the yards per carry. He struggled early on in his career. He had a couple of good years, and last year he came back down a little bit. Sure, that might have been due to injury, but you talk about the size and the injury, and maybe I'm just paranoid, but anybody who has had even one injury at running back, I'm just terrified. I don't want to touch him. You talk about that small size. Reoccurring injuries are huge for small running backs, and that's why I talk about his ceiling. Either they won't play him that much, or they'll play him a lot, and I feel like he's going to have a couple of games missed or a couple of games less productive due to injury. So I think 11 is about the highest that he'll go, you know, as far as value in my mind. I don't think he's going to get much better than this, but he's also got a high floor. He's very talented, does it both in the pass and in the running game, you know, as we talk about how important that is.
So for me, number 12 is Christian McCaffrey. Now, he's got the best hands of any running back in football. I would say Bell is probably a close second and Johnson behind him, but he's a phenomenal wide receiver. Now, he did struggle quite a bit in the running game last year. That's a little bit of a concern. One of the things that's happened now, Jonathan Stewart's been cut. That bodes well for Christian McCaffrey. And if you take a look at it, after Week 9, we did see some improvement in terms of his ability to run the ball. He improved after Week 9. He started running it more effectively. We need to see a lot more in that before we can trust that he's going to get the ball 15, 20 carries a game. But you got to rank him high because his hands are so good. This guy's a rookie, had 80 catches, which is amazing. So simply on that alone, he's a guy that you got to have. He's got so much potential right now. So I got Christian McCaffrey, number 12.
Yeah.
If you're in a PPR league, he's definitely top 10.
Yeah, exactly. That was the big one selling point for me. I had him, 15 to 20, and then they let Stewart go, and that's huge. They seem to be all in on him, and you can tell he's definitely going to get the ball this year. And based on his hands and the fact that he was starting to run better, I'm pretty confident that he's going to be able to at least do a little bit with it. So I feel like he's a great, fairly safe pick. What about your number 13?
Yeah, my number 13, I got Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is a guy that he's a volume play. You got to have him up there. He's really the only guy that they have at this point. He's going to get carries. He does have decent hands on the backfield. But I think we have to be careful, a little caution there. He hasn't been that impressive. In fact, if you take a look at it, his yards per carry career-wise are 3.8. He's never broke 4 in 3 seasons. So he's a guy that gets volume play. He's done pretty well, but he just hasn't turned that corner in terms of becoming a great running back. So for me, as a volume play, he's number 13. I can't put him in the top 10 at this point.
Yeah, I'll talk about him. He's my number 14. I'll talk about that too. But he do have some concerns with him. But number 13, I had Kenyon Drake. Again, I don't know. Certainly going to have to rethink this as we look into that trade. The question we have to ask ourselves, and I'm very confident in Drake's ability to play. He looked great. But the question is there a reason that they were looking for a running back, or was just this the Bears making an acquisition and maybe the Dolphins are looking at it? Maybe it doesn't happen. If it does, certainly he loses tons of value, but if it doesn't, the question is, do the Dolphins have confidence in him? Yes or no? Who knows? So, as always, I'm big on, can he catch the ball? If he can't catch out of the backfield nowadays, it's really hard for him to be truly productive, and Kenyon Drake can do that. He didn't play much last year. You actually have to really look at his game logs to see his value. In fact, for the first, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks, he only managed to get like 5 carries and like 3 catches. But then all of a sudden you go and you look at his last 5 games, he had 2 100-yard games, a couple 75-yard games. So you look at, he really turned on the production late in the season. Only question mark there is whether or not the Dolphins have confidence in him and really want to use him, or if they're going to go out and get somebody else. But again, it's just March, so we have plenty of time to sit back and see.
Yeah, I like Kenyon Drake. I'll get to him in a bit. But for me, number 14 is Mark Ingram. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's averaged over 50 catches the last 3 years. The former first-round pick has really fulfilled his potential. This guy is very good running back. There's really not much he can't do at this point. The reason why for me he's not higher is because he shares that backfield with Alvin Kamara. If he didn't have to do that, he'd probably around 5, 6, or 7 range for me. This guy can do it all. But you got to bump down his value obviously because of the split carries. In fact, I kind of wonder at some point if they would be temptation on New Orleans' part to maybe deal him and get some players. But as of now, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
Yeah, so now I get to talk about Gordon. You already hit a lot of points on him. The biggest thing of all that's really keeping me from going a lot higher with Gordon, he does get in the end zone a lot, but the yards per carry is very dangerous. I've never seen a running back stay in the NFL and have a productive role in an offense with such a low yards per carry.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm just waiting, and I feel like he's a fairly talented, somewhat, athletic running back, who is a big, thick guy who they're just going to keep giving it to him in the end zone, but they're basically just waiting till the season that they find another good option, The other thing is, my other concern with him is just that Austin Eckler's really turned it on in the receiving game, and they don't need Gordon out there on third downs or anything long. They have Eckler, who really starting to turn up the production. I don't think that he's quite at the ability to take over Gordon's role. And again, I don't want to. I still have him at 14, which is okay, but I definitely don't trust him, and I don't think that he's a great long-term option. But he finds the end zone, and they're using him in that offense, so you definitely could keep him. He could certainly be an option for you.
Yes, for me, number 15, a lot of people think I'm overshooting with this one, but I like Al Collins. We were huge on him last year. We kept telling people, watch this guy. He looked good. For some, he was a surprise. He really shouldn't be. I was more surprised that Seattle let this guy go the year before, because in preseason with Seattle and at times when we played last year, this guy looked like he had a lot of potential. Of course, as we know, Seattle could have used him last year with all the injuries that he had. So last year he comes in and he doesn't get a lot of carries, but the year goes on, they increase his carries. One of the reasons why is early in the year he had some issues with fumbling, but as they increase his carries, his productions continue to go up. He looked great last year. He finished with 973 yards, and he had a yards per carry of 4.6. You look at the last 7 games, that's where all his touchdown production happened. He had 6 touchdowns the last 7 games, and they started using him increasingly in the passing game. This guy really has everything to be successful. I expect that Baltimore is going to make him their go-to guy next year. I foresee this guy getting 1,200 yards and 8 TDs. I like Al Collins. I think that he's the real deal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Number 15, I went Joe Mixon. He had an extremely disappointing season last season. A lot of people were expecting more from him. But, that whole offense was a mess, and things were just not quite there. And he took quite a while to start really earning his role and really earning his spot as the starter in that offense. But this year, thinking that he's going to be the workhorse back, and when they let him be the workhorse back in games, he was productive. They played the Cleveland Browns, who actually had a pretty good run defense last season. They gave him 23 carries. He got 114 yards, averaged 5.0 yards per carry, got in the end zone, got 3 catches for 51 yards. They played Baltimore the last week of the season. They gave him 18 carries. He had 96 yards on 5.3 yards per carry. The big thing was whether or not they were going to use him right, whether or not they were going to use him. When they used him, if you look at his game logs, when they gave him lots of carries, he was producing, even against good run defenses. But that offense was a mess, and they weren't using him like they should have. They weren't using him at all at some points. If they commit to Mixon as their man, it will be a good fantasy season for him. I'm excited to see what he can do, that's for sure. It's going to be good.
Well, why don't you click on to the next one, because that'll carry right into the conversation. So I got Joe Mixon, number 16. Like you, a lot of people felt like this guy was going to be a first round pick, but he dropped out of the first round primarily because of domestic abuse charges. This guy's huge, 227 pounds. He's got all the gifts. He did struggle last year running the ball, but like we saw, he did get he saw improvement down the stretch. 2 of the last 4 games, he ran the ball really well, and he was very effective in the passing game. He's simply too talented to ignore. And so, since you need to consider the fact that we are talking about dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, Joe Mixon for me, based on his potential and some things we saw late in the year, to me is my number 16 back.
Yeah, so my number 16 is Derrick Henry, and he's a guy that's he's kind of a second coming of C.J. Spiller for me. C.J. Spiller is a guy I spent many years in keeper leagues, just keeping him, just waiting, and he never turned out, and I just kept thinking that Spiller would do it, and I feel like maybe this could happen with Henry. Year after year, I see how talented he is, and I'm waiting for it to be his season. I think this is finally the year. Simply because they were able to move on from DeMarco Murray, who's getting old and his production is slowing down. I thought it was last year, but it wasn't. I think Henry's pretty legit. That whole offense struggled, and so his yards per carry were a bit low last season, only 4.2. But when that offense is able to move the ball and that passing game is able to do something, I'm excited to see what he can do. He's a very traditional, big, kind of heavy, mean runner, so to speak. And I think that fits the Tennessee offense very well. I'd like to see him have more production in the receiving game, which is one of the biggest things that keeps this low for me. But I think this is finally the year that they really commit to him as the man in that offense. If he gets lots of carries, he should get 250 to 300 carries, should find the end zone 8 to 10 times. I'm excited to see what he can do. Again, his biggest limitation is whether or not that offense is able to move the ball and whether or not, or the fact that he is not able to receive much out of the backfield. He's not too productive there. But you clearly have some thoughts on this.
Well, I'll get to him in a bit here. I've got him ranked number 18. But, yeah, I'll definitely share that in a bit as far as Henry goes. You want me to get to my guy next?
Yeah.
So let's get to Kenny Drake. Obviously the reports that there might be a trade, that Jordan Howard might go there, is concerning for Drake. I'm going to go on paper as saying I think that's a mistake. I love Jordan Howard. Jordan's not great in the passing game. I think Drake offers a lot. I think ultimately you're not upgrading that much. I think Drake has the opportunity, the ability to become a legitimate number 1 running back in the NFL. So you take a look at last year after Jay Ajayi left. He really exploded the last 5 weeks as they increased his role. Last 5 weeks he had a total of 444 yards rushing, 4 yards per carry, 4.88. He had 17 catches. Really, he's got decent size. He's got all the tools to be the number 1 guy. And I kind of wonder, too, when they trade Jay Ajayi at that point, that seemed kind of puzzling for a lot of people. And I wonder, did the coaching staff maybe see something in Drake? Mm-hmm. That's maybe what I was thinking, although the current conversation about Howard. If Howard goes there, obviously his value plummets. But if he doesn't, I think this guy's got the skill to be a stud.
Yeah, exactly. I have to think that Howard's not going to go there, and this was a move by the Bears to maybe see what they could get because they're frustrated with the way that he plays or for whatever reason. And I have to imagine the Dolphins aren't going to take that trade, and they're not too interested in it. But, we're desperate for football news, so something happens, and it automatically becomes legitimate, and we assume it's going through. But I don't think that it will. Of course, if it does, that changes a lot.
Well, I think the force that's really driving this trade talk is actually Jarvis Landry. His agent asked if they could have permission to negotiate. He wants out of Miami at this point. I think he's upset he didn't get a long-term deal. They franchise tagged him. There's a lot of things going on there. So I think for both parties it might be better. Not that they want to get rid of Howard or they want to get rid of Landry, but you got a player that's unhappy, and we know that keeping chemistry is so important. So I think it's really Landry that was driving the push for this trade. So
yeah, exactly.
So for me, number 18. Oh, actually, you got to go do number 17.
You're gonna skip me?
Go ahead.
Is that?
Go ahead.
So you already talked a lot about Mark Ingram, and the biggest thing that keeps Mark Ingram, he would easily be top 10. He'd be close to number 4 or 5 for me. Is Alvin Kamara, and yet he's got to be in the top 20. Over the last 2 years, he's averaged over 1,000 yards rushing, 5.0 yards per carry, and basically 10 touchdowns a season. Those are great numbers. Again, the real concern is there enough room in town for the two of them, and I don't think that there is, and I think maybe he makes a slight drop off. He got 12 rushing touchdowns last season. I don't imagine he's going to get another 12 this year, but I think he's still a very productive running back, and at any point that Kamara's not on the field, Ingram will be, and when he's out there, he's going to get the job done. So you got to keep him top 20, but that's the obvious big concern there. Now, if you want, you
Now
can
we'll go.
go.
Okay. Second number 18, I got Derrick Henry. Now you talked about, is Derrick Henry the problem or is it the Titans? Last year was clear when he was on the field and he ran the ball, he was a much, much more effective running back over DeMarco Murray. He really was. DeMarco Murray last year looked like he should probably hang up at this point. He only averaged 4.2 yards per carry, but for a big physical back with limited carries, that's not bad. A lot of times running backs like that actually get more productive the more carries they see in a game. And so I think all things considered, I think he fared pretty well. I think what he really needs, he needs that opportunity to get 225 carries for a season, 250 carries per season. We need the Titans to commit this guy, and if we do, I think that he's going to be solid. And like you said, he's a huge back, 247 pounds. He's a north-south runner, very physical. I think Derrick Henry should break the top 20 this year, but like you, I'm a little nervous to see, are they going to commit to this guy? They need to do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing, is the committing. Another team who has been fully committed to their running back, and yet we still have concerns, the Buffalo Bills and LaShawn McCoy. I've been a big fan of LaShawn McCoy throughout my career. Love what he's able to do. I was huge on him last year. Super excited, traded for him, probably gave up too much, but you know what? It's just a game, so who cares, I guess. But I think now we're starting to come to the end of the LaShawn McCoy era. When the season starts, he'll be 30, and 30 is like 40 for running backs is like 40 for quarterbacks. It's very hard to be productive after that. And we're already seeing last year the drop off in production for him. In 2016, he had 5.0 yards per carry. He went down to 4.0 last year. He had 13 rushing touchdowns in 2016. In 2017, he had only 6. On the bright side, he went up in receptions, getting 59 catches last year, 448 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I actually think he still carries a pretty good amount of value in PPR leagues, but you can see that he's getting a bit old and he's losing a lot of value, so he's dropping to the low 20s. He's got a high floor, so to speak, and a low ceiling. I don't imagine him being a terrible running back this next year, and I don't imagine him being a great running back. And finally, just another concern there is just that offense doesn't have a quarterback. The offensive line isn't great, and they certainly don't have any receivers. But I guess on the bright side, he will get the ball a lot.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I agree with you there. So for me, number 19 is Isaiah Crowell. This is a guy, actually, I feel terrible. He's really been handcuffed to a terrible team. As we know, the Cleveland Browns are a bad team and a bad organization. But he's been productive in his career. His career yards per carry, 4.2. He's always flirted with the idea that we think he's going to break into a 1,000-yard season. It hasn't happened. Well, he's not seen the field a lot. He's not getting a lot of touches because that offense struggles. He's been showing the ability to catch the ball in the backfield. Last year, he had 28 catches. The year before that, he had 40. This guy now, a lot of talk, he's going to be a free agent. He's going to go elsewhere. If he lands on the right team, this is a guy that I actually really like. I think he's got a lot of skill. He could be a sleeper pick for a lot of teams out there. I like Isaiah Crowell. He's still young enough. He's still talented enough that he falls in the right situation. You got to grab this guy.
Yeah, so at number 19 for me, I went Alex Collins. I hate talking about a player after you talk about him. You take away most of the interesting information. I'm just the boring guy who says, yeah, I agree, he's good. But I like what he's going to do this year. I think the Ravens are really going to commit to him. In fact, we look at his production was really, he had 973 yards, 6 touchdowns last year, but all 6 of those touchdowns came in the last 7 games of the season. He got hot down the stretch. And the important thing to note is when that offense was finally getting good is when he got good. So I think this could be a great year for him. My only concern is I don't trust Joe Flacco. I don't trust that offensive line. I don't trust that offense as a whole, especially on such a defensive team. I think he's a very talented player, but we'll see how things go. We'll see if they even do commit to him as the full-time back and if that offense is able to move the ball. If it is, I think he could be much higher than 19. But the way are things going, we haven't seen that offense make any additions to the offensive line or the receiving core or anything. So I just got to keep him low based on, it's kind of, I hate saying this again because I've said this about other players, but if that offense can't move the ball, there's only so many carries you can give them on 4 downs, So that's why I keep him low, but I definitely could see myself moving him way up on this list.
So for me, number 20 is LaShawn McCoy. Like you said, he's old. He's 30. Like you said, that for running back terms is very old. It is a keeper league that we're discussing, the Dynasty League. With that said, we always have to be careful when we look at Dynasty. It's great to get that young player that's solid, that okay, I can have Todd Gurley. He could be my running back next 5 or 6 years. Isn't that exciting? But you can be so focused on the future in Dynasty that you forget the here and now. And the bottom line is he's still too talented. He's too quality of a running back to not put in the top 20 conversation. So for some of you guys out there, maybe he only has a year or two left, but that's going to be enough to win a championship. So let's not forget how talented this guy is. So for me, that's my top 20. A couple other guys out there that you need to keep an eye on, looking forward, because it is a dynasty conversation that we are having. Chris Carson for Seattle looked really good last year. We don't know if they're going to sign anybody or draft anybody, but if not, he would be the guy to look at. Another one is Matt Breida for San Francisco. A lot of talk there that they may not bring back Carlos Hyde. He could become the guy there. I think about Jerick McKinnon, Deion Lewis. These are all guys to keep an eye on. Obviously, guys in the draft. And now the reason why we're not talking about guys coming out of the college at this point is what's going to make them successful is not nearly their talent level, but the situation that they land in, and we won't know that till after the draft.
Actually, one thing I was going to say, I'm going to be, personally myself, you'll be a little bit less involved in this, but I'm going to be doing some videos. We're going to review the combine and look at some guys who have some fantasy options, see who might go where, and start making some predictions about the draft. That'll be fun, exciting, so look out for those videos. Once again, thank you for watching our video about Rob's top 20 and my top 19, since he skipped me again and I didn't get my 20 in.
I assume you're going to finish it now. Talk about Isaiah Crowell.
No, there's not much to say. He's a very talented back. Again, as I've beaten a dead horse here, can that offense move the ball? But my biggest concern is actually Duke Johnson. He only had 348 yards rushing last year, but he had 693 yards receiving. That's a lot of yards, a lot of touches, 74 catches. That's a lot of time that Crowell's not going to be out on the field. That's my big concern, is that what little that Browns do have to offer Crowell, they're not offering all of it to him, and they're giving a bit of it to Duke Johnson. So just kind of add that in there. But yeah.
Well, the one thing that might help them, one, if Crowell stays with Cleveland, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to look at the quarterback situation. But Josh Gordon, everything I've been reading reports, he's doing great in the offseason. He's staying clean. He's looking good. This will be the full year that he'll have. Josh Gordon is a stud. He's top 5 wide receiver. You see that in our video. And he's a type of wide receiver that could really free things up for that running back if he stays there, if he stays productive, stays out of trouble. That might give him a little boost, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as always, we thank you so much for watching. And I want to say one more time, keep looking out for videos. We're going to keep posting a ton more. We're really excited getting ramped up for the season. It's super early, but we're too excited to not do anything. We're also too desperate for views.
Yeah, subscribe, get the word out there. The other thing that we're doing is the first year or two, we did it kind of for fun. We're trying to ramp up the information. We want to give you guys the best information, be successful, and look for our new website that should be published in about a month.
Yeah, well, as always, thank you guys so much. You have a great day.